Welcome to the 24th Annual Miami Jewish Film Festival, one of the world's largest and oldest Jewish cultural events. We want to thank all of our members, sponsors, community partners, volunteers, all of you film lovers, and especially our presenting sponsors, the Center for the Advancement for Jewish Education, SAGE, and the Greater Miami Jewish Federation for their continued support throughout all these years. My name is Annette Fromm. I have no title or program. If you teach for SAGE Adult Learning, please mention that and the course you teach currently, as well as any upcoming courses. I'm excited to be moderating a virtual conversation in our currently virtual world. I personally call it Hotel California, if you get the illusion. We are with director Max Geilke and Mario Forth and editor Nicole Schmeier from the film Salonika, City with Amnesia, which is premiering at this year's film festival. Thank you all for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
So, Max Geilke on the left is the one with the camera and the co-director of the film. He's a filmmaker and web developer living in Cologne, Germany. He also takes care of post-production process for the film. In addition, Geilke works as technical operator for stage shows. He runs a small media company which helped producing the documentary film Salonika, A City with Amnesia. After a trip to Greece in 2012, Max came up with the idea for a film about Thessaloniki. Mario Forth, with the hat and the snail t-shirt, is also a co-director. He's the one with the microphone in the film. In the end, he did the sound mix for the documentary at his company S4P, Sound for People. Nicole is the editor, and you've seen in the film how skillfully she pieced together historic films, historic stills, the interviews with individuals, and current scenes of the city of Thessaloniki. So in the film, Thessaloniki is the protagonist, as you've written. It's a city with its people, filled with old stones, houses, and streets. Hours of footage were collected to portray Thessaloniki as a modern city. This footage is combined with animations and picture-in-picture compositing to create a narrative. The film is a careful mix of historic footage from the early 20th century, from the period of World War II, and post-war up to the present. It also includes snippets from the letter from the unknown traveler, along with conversations with people living in Thessaloniki now. One of the often related images is the gravestones in the ruined cemetery. They are the silent witnesses of a forgotten past in a city that suffers from some kind of amnesia. What drew you to this story, and why did you cast it as amnesia, a state of partial or whole loss of memory?
Okay, maybe I begin. Yeah, the amnesia part. When we came first to the city of Thessaloniki, we came there in 2012, and we saw a place which is unlike like cities where you still see the history. For example, if you go to Athens or if you go to Rome, these are cities where you immediately see these are old grown cities, the ancient parts still remain, right? If you go to Berlin these days, after the Union of Germany, you already saw it was a separated city. You had a strip there, it was empty. Now the city grew together, it disappears. You can say, for example, Berlin also suffers from amnesia when you're talking about the separation of Germany, because visually it goes together, and the new generation now is like it's 30 years ago, and so the younger people don't know about it or haven't haven't lived that. In Thessaloniki, it's almost like this, despite you have a really long history, where you come and you see a Roman agora, you see a university campus with some Jewish tombstones, you see some Ottoman tombstones as well somewhere, and you try to say, okay, what is this real? Is it just thrown here, like, or is it really ancient? So you are not sure when you look at it. Yeah, it's hard to believe. So we came up with the title not because of only a memory loss by people, by the population, because there's of course several reasons why there is some kind of memory missing link, but it's also about the visual part. That's why we, of course, as filmmakers, we concentrate more on the visual part and try to transport that on the pictures. That there's a missing connection. Something is wrong. All of these stones are spread all over the city, and walls were built with Jewish tombstones. Why did this happen? And yeah, this is why we came up with the title. And amnesia is not something that is self-inflicted, not necessarily self-inflicted. It can happen to you. You get an amnesia for one of the other reasons. Sometimes it's not your fault, let's say. It's not on purpose. Sometimes you can say some people want to forget. That's of course for sure. That's also. But yeah, amnesia covers as a metaphor basically everything you can find in the city and here.
I have a question out of left field that I didn't present you. I'm sure you're aware that the Greek entry in this year's Oscars is a film called Milo, or Apple, that is about amnesia. Have you seen it?
No, so I don't know. Yeah.
I think it's a really kind of interesting confluence, a very different approach to amnesia. But from what you observed in doing your research, because all three of you did extensive research, and in speaking to people in the Greek situation, do you think it's easier to suffer from amnesia or to remember the past?
Do you want to?
Easier. Yeah, it's not. It's not a matter of what is easier. If you remember your past, you know where you come from, and then I think it's the only way to go further. To make a progressive way, and if you forget the past, you make the mistakes of the past again, and it's not possible to go.
So from what you observed in Thessaloniki, and I don't know how long the production took, do you feel there is a movement to clear up what you call the amnesia?
We made we did the production for 7 years.
Oh.
And I think I can say definitely there is a kind of progress going on. It is it is slowly, but yes, there is some kind of progress.
Yeah. I mean, we had the mayor, who's not mayor anymore of Thessaloniki, I think for 8 years. Yanis Boutaris, he's also in the film, the one with the tattoos on his arm, and he's a strange guy. He's actually like more or less a business type of guy, but he had this mindset to combine tourism and the history of Thessaloniki. So he really was the first one who really was empathetic for these things, and he and the Jewish community, they brought several projects to make.
Mhm.
But of course, as we learned, money is lacking everywhere in Greece, and so many projects like this memorial center, which was planned long ago. I didn't know what's the stage now, because we haven't been to the city almost now for a year. So, but what I learned from last year, it didn't make any progress, or slower than expected. So, yeah, many ideas, but yeah, it's lacking the finances most of the time, and of course of the willingness of the people. We filmed the laying of stumble stones, these golden stones where Jewish
Yes.
names were. This is all over Europe, especially in Germany. You find them everywhere, and in Thessaloniki it was quite hard to place them in front of some buildings. Some landlords, some house owners didn't want that. So in the inner parts of the city. So they were first placed in the more or less outer parts of the city. Yeah. So
Actually, my next question somewhat relates to that. I knew what you were doing because I only recently learned of that project of laying those stones in cities across Europe. But you didn't identify it. So people that don't know what it is don't know what it is. And you also don't identify the speakers. I knew that one of the speakers was, I believe, the director of the Jewish Museum in Thessaloniki. Thessaloniki has a well-established Jewish museum. And could you speak about your choice not to identify the speakers?
yeah,
Oh, excuse me, about at the end, it suddenly hit me like a lightning bolt. Oh, that's Hans Cuneo, because I've read of Hans Cuneo, the German accented
that's great.
survivor.
That's great. Yeah, maybe Nicole, we in the editing room, we finally decided to do that this way. Maybe Nicole, if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, I think it was an experiment, and I think some people are very critic about this. But the thought about it was you have a portrait of a city. The protagonist is the city, and the people living in the city or searching for the history of the city and so on. They are something like a choir of the city, and the choir, all the people make a picture of the city. And so we thought maybe it could be, when you mention this is an historian, I don't know in English. Historical. You have some expectations because you think, oh, she has studied and she knew what she was talking about. And you see another guy who's who was working in a pharmacy, and but he's very interested in the history, and maybe the audience thinks, oh, I don't know, maybe he's just he's doing this for fun. And you have different expectations in listening to the stories the people tell. And so we thought, no, every voice has the same meaning, it has the same impact. And so it's a small part of the city, and every person tells his personal story about Thessaloniki, about the history and so on. Maybe you want to add something? I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, we came to the problem when we thought about what we should write for each person. And if you write down the profession, in the case of Josef, who runs this pharmacy, and he knows probably more about the tombstones on the university campus more than anyone else, because he really introduces everybody into where to find which kind of stones, what was written into the stones, because you cannot read them anymore, graffiti was sprayed on it. The tombstones get thrown around and those inscriptions get lost. So he really archived those things, but he's a pharmacist. He doesn't call himself an activist, not a journalist, not a historian. So what do you call him? And things like this. And then we said, okay, probably we can manage to do it without titles without lower thirds for the people. So it was an experiment. We get some critics for that, but I still think it was the best decision because of this concept.
Great, great. You mentioned the Holocaust Memorial, and I do believe that ground was recently, not the memorial, but the education center, ground was recently broken on that. And in fact, actually, Max Cunio was interviewed yesterday by one of the Greek presses as well. And of course, the Jewish Museum in Thessaloniki is quite well established. What role did these institutions play in reducing amnesia?
Well, I can just, what comes to my mind when I think about the Jewish Museum is actually it does not really help with the fact of the amnesia, because when you go to the Jewish Museum, it's really, really small. And the huge part of it is ancient Jewish times from Thessaloniki. The modern times are one like a small living room full of stuff from 50, 60,000 people living in the 20th century. I mean, even more people, of course, in total in the 20th century, Jewish people living there. All that is left in the city, or what they found, what was good enough to make an exposition, it was some things from a synagogue, some photos, a spoon, a knife, and that's it. A bit more, but I'm exaggerating, but it's a really small place. And a lot of it is ancient Jewish tombstones from like before Ottoman, like 3rd century or something. So they say they are not really a museum where you can find things, like Erica, the director, said in the film. It's more like a place where you find like a mirror where you really see, okay, all of this is really lost, because if it wasn't, it would be here. Same thing as my introduction. It's hard to believe history when you see this. That's the thing. But that's why also this city is really a good and hard example for the Holocaust, because the Nazis wanted to distinguish Jewish life, like even the remembrance of Jewish life. So you have to get rid of everything, and this almost happened more or less, or it didn't work out at the end. But when you find places like the Jewish Museum, you really think, okay, where's all this stuff gone? So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So this film is somewhat about the history of Thessaloniki, which had historically been known as the Jerusalem of the Balkans because of the numerous population, the schools and synagogues and Jewish life there. The story of the present and past of Thessaloniki is really told well in the film. The film had its world premiere, if I'm correct, at the Thessaloniki Film Festival in 2019. What was the response to the film in Thessaloniki then and since then?
You want to add? You was there?
Yes, I was there. Yeah, it was a very, sometimes even a very emotional response, because there are many people from Thessaloniki in the film, and we showed it 2 times, and 2 times the cinema was sold out. And yeah, some people come out with rolling tears, and because everyone who lives in Thessaloniki can find something in the film for him or her, and can remember small things or connect it to something else. Or yeah, it was a great moment even for me to see it.
What has the response been where it's been shown elsewhere? I imagine you've shown it elsewhere since in the intervening time.
Did we? It was kind of hard to get it to film festivals, actually. Okay, last year, Corona year, I think there was no screening. We wanted to make a German premiere in Cologne, which was cancelled. Until now, we didn't have the chance to make it. But so actually, to say the truth, no, it hasn't been shown at a film festival since then. Yeah. We had like private screenings, but no. Yeah.
It's a shame you can't be here because in Miami there is quite a significant Sephardic community from many different places, but great interest in this theme. So I'm sure the response here is fabulous. I noticed that funding came through a Kickstarter campaign. Yay! And you wrote that you wanted to show a film how the former Jerusalem of the Balkans flourished, fell, and remained unremembered. 101 of the backers on Kickstarter were predominantly from Germany, the US, Greece, and then from other countries. Why do you think most of the support came from Germany? And what was the response to the film from the backers? Have you had response?
Yeah, of course, the support came from Germany because this is, yeah, we promoted it in Germany mostly. Yeah, we were quite happy that so many people we didn't know at all from the US supported us. And I had a call with someone from New York who called me, said, "You want to making a film about my family's history?" I said, "Yes." And he said, "Okay, maybe I have some people might support you." So this helped. And there were some random people from the US. Almost everybody not everybody from the US yet, because there was also last year a bit of a problem to send DVDs. But like 99% of the backers have a film, a DVD, a Blu-ray, and some of them responded. I think many people from Greece responded, and they had everybody who responded had, of course, a good feedback. Yeah, and there's people really making they written a long comment on the film, which was really good, and praising it. So we were quite happy that they liked it. But of course, not 100 people made a comment. So maybe just 5 or 6.
I heard a very interesting discussion recently with the current mayor of the city of Yanina, which is in northwestern Greece. And their mayor is a member of the Jewish community. And he closed the presentation by saying, well, because of its predominance and its importance, Salonika, Thessaloniki, gets all the interest and all the publicity and all the documentation. But there were and still are other Jewish communities that have their unique histories. Some of them thought to be the oldest communities in Europe. Do you have any other plans to do anything else in Greece with the Jewish history, with the status of Jewish history and life in Greece?
Haven't thought about that. I mean, Ioannina, or whatever it's called in English, it's interesting because yeah, it's also a Sephardic community, right?
No.
No,
it's very interesting. There were Jews in Greece when the Spanish Jews
I know,
came,
but okay,
and
then I mix
in
it.
Yanina they remained Greek speaking. They
Okay,
didn't.
yeah, okay. Then I mix it because
It's
then
okay.
it doesn't make sense, because there was also another town where Jews spoke Spanish. Because some historians say, why did so many Jews from Thessaloniki not survive, right? And there was this theory that Greek-speaking Jews were easier hidden or turned into Christians. because they fluently spoke Greek. But there were other Sephardic smaller communities in Greece which survived despite of speaking Spanish, Ladino.
Mhm.
Anyway, maybe it wasn't Ioannina, maybe it was a different town. But okay, but this is interesting because, yeah, there are some theories, and maybe they're wrong. Maybe they're somehow true, of course, that it hit Thessaloniki really hard in comparison, and there must be a reason. But it's not that easy just to say, okay, it's because they spoke Spanish. It's not the sufficient reason, but we don't know. So yeah, it's an interesting topic still. Could also feature the whole Balkan and many cities like this, but we don't know. Now
Yeah.
it's really hard to make plans about documentary, actually. So yeah.
It is. It is. It
Yeah.
is. How about your experience and your immersion into this story?
Well, when I came into the project, they shoot, as I told, 7 years. So when I came into the project was 5 years or 6 years old. So there was a lot there, and I was very fascinated what was there, because the choice of the people they interviewed was so fantastic and so interesting for me, because they were so different, and you have really such a different picture of the city and such different views. And to tell you the truth, I didn't know very much about the history of Thessaloniki, so I learned a lot of this part. And what I really liked and was to combine the history part, the unknown American woman, the archive material, and the actual scenes from now, from the present. And so it was very, very interesting. Most of the times when we met and we just were editing, we just placed on the whiteboard the structure and the dramaturgy. We try to combine the American woman and the past and the present and so on. It was very, very interesting. And of course, it was very hard. It was really hard to watch all the archive material, because it's, of course, I learned a lot about it in school, and you can, of course, you can see it, but not in that concentrated form. And it was very, very hard to stand it, to see what was really going on. And I thought, it's very. We need to make these films, and we need to talk to the survivors, because it's not very much time anymore to talk to the survivors, because they are old and they will vanish. And so it was a movie which has very much influence on me for many reasons. And it was the form of the film, the film making. It was, of course, the topic, and it was also the working together with two directors. It's also not so usual, and it was a good experience, and had a great impact.
Nicole, you mentioned the American woman. How did you all find that correspondence?
Sorry, what?
How did you find the letter from the American woman?
The letter, Max and Mario found them. So
On Google.
Really? Are you serious?
Yeah, no, I read, I think it was a source for Mazar's book, Salonika, City of Greece. And there he had a small part. What he took from the letter was tourism was coming up in the 19th century, and then he quoted this letter because it was a source for tourism for him, right? And I looked up this letter, and you can find it on Google books, and copied and try. It's really long, really well written. It gives you an impression of the people who were able to travel in the time, what kind of language they were able to write down in a letter. It's not in any comparison to the language I hear nowadays from most of people. It's really good language, and yeah, it's a really long letter, and we just cut it down to the interesting pieces, right? And left out quite a lot, but yeah, it's really interesting to have this real letter, but reenacted, but real letter as a source, because it's actually the only part of the film where you learn something which is about the city before World War II, yeah, or let's say before the big fire, or when Jews really ran the city center commercially and whatever. Yeah, you don't have anybody talking about that, so you only have this letter actually. So and it's
I thought it really added a very personal touch. I've read many of the travelers' accounts from the 19th century of diplomats and so forth, but not such a very personal perspective and look at the city. It was a really excellent touch and contribution to the entire film.
If you want to look for it, you just have to type in "letters to my sister."
Okay.
Letters to my sister, and maybe Thessaloniki. No, of course not. This was Salonika.
Salonika.
Yeah, and letters to my sister. You find it. You find it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe some of our viewers would like to pursue that and
Yeah,
read more.
yeah. She wrote letters from Constantinopolis, from Istanbul. She wrote letters. She made a trip around the Black Sea with her husband. She just mentioned him like once in a letter, said, "Okay, he's busy," and yeah, like this. And but then you have to imagine just to help people to get. I mean, I didn't have this mindset before. She normally a woman wouldn't have money with her, but she was able to go everywhere and drink tea and whatever. Just you have to know this, because you don't find it in the letter, because it's so common for her to be invited. She doesn't mention it. Yeah, so it's interesting to read it. So yeah.
Nice, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, do you have anything you'd like to add to this conversation? The film, I think, is a great contribution. The approach, the perspective adds to our knowledge about this significant Jewish city.
Yeah. No, I think so far I've talked a lot. So I've talked about everything I know.
I doubt that.
I only can say, okay, if you've never been to Thessaloniki, just go there, because it's not only a very hidden history there. It's also a very good city to be there and to live. And yeah, if anyone has ever the chance to go there, visit it. It's a great city.
Yeah.
And of course, yeah, if you want to visit for some reason, if you want to visit some sites of the film you see in the film and get special advice for finding stuff you won't find in a normal tourist guide, can contact us. We can connect you to people. If Corona is over and you're free to travel for whatever reason, just ask us. We can maybe we can make some contacts to like locals who can show you around, or I've made a map on Google again on Google for the different, or we've made it together for different spots where to find stuff. And yeah, of course we're happy to share this information.
Nicole, as editor, do you have anything to add?
No, I just want to say thank you for showing this film, because as you heard before, they both worked for 7 years, and so it's a very great pleasure that the film is now shown, because as Max mentioned, it wasn't screened so often, so it's very good, and thank you very much.
Thank you. I think your work is so seamless in piecing together the disparate and different images and people speaking and moving around the city. It gives you a great sense of the city. Well, Max, Mario, and Nicole, I'd like to thank you for bringing this beautiful and insightful film, Salonika, City with Amnesia, to us in Miami and to everyone. I'd also like to thank you for sharing some of the background, some of your information with our audience. Again, we thank our members, our sponsors, the community sponsors, and many volunteers, and especially our presenting sponsors, the Center for the Advancement of Jewish Education, SAGE, and the Greater Miami Jewish Federation. Thank you also, our audience, for participating in the 24th Annual Miami Jewish Film Festival. Thanks to everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.